Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a seemingly simple, everyday gardening journal entry, specifically part 946, written by a gardener named Ang on July 5th, 2026, and we're going to transform it into a fascinating botanical whodunit. It's actually amazing just how much of the scientific method, deductive reasoning, and pure detective work goes into the quiet hobby of tending to a backyard balcony garden. If you've ever planted a seed or even just watched a weed push its way through a crack in the pavement, you know that nature is absolutely full of surprises. But what happens when the gardener themselves becomes the lead investigator in a mystery of their own making? Well, let's find out. So, we're going to hook right into the central mystery of Ang's gardening notes today. Our main objective? Investigating the unexpected life emerging in the soil of these seemingly empty containers. You see, a garden is never truly empty, even when it looks totally barren. It's really more of a dormant canvas. In this entry, Ang starts off by observing something highly irregular, something that definitely wasn't explicitly planned, pushing its way right up into the sunlight. And that forces us to ask the foundational question of literally all great botanical mysteries. What exact secret is sprouting in those empty pots? Let's move into our first section, the balcony harvest, setting the scene of the crime. Every good investigation needs a clear understanding of the germination scene, right? To really grasp this mystery, we have to look at Ang's routine process, which actually acted as the catalyst for our entire investigation. The process is this beautiful, slightly chaotic collaboration with nature. Here's how it goes. Step 1. Ang harvests dried, spent flowers from numerous plants located all around the balcony. Step 2 involves taking that harvested material and just indiscriminately scattering it around empty pots. And finally, step 3 is simply waiting for germination to happen naturally right alongside the inevitable weeds. It's a brilliant, if totally unpredictable, method of gardening. By scattering the dried flowers from multiple different plants all at once, Ang basically created a botanical lottery. The soil is now this wild mix of known variables, unknown variables, and rogue elements like weeds carried in by the wind. It absolutely sets the perfect stage for a case of mistaken identity.
Next up is our second section, the mystery seedling, discovering the clues.
Out of all the standard weeds popping up and all those intentionally scattered seeds from the various spent flowers, this single pot really demands our attention. It sparks the whole investigation, honestly, because it breaks the pattern. The gardener recognizes the weeds and probably recognizes some of the standard germinations, but this specific pot contains a sprout that is distinct, totally unfamiliar, yet oddly resonant. It completely begs the question, what exactly is growing here? Well, to answer that, we have to isolate the evidence. Let's take a closer look at the precise physical evidence Ang notes. This is where the keen eye of the gardener really shines. We've got two very specific morphological clues to work with. First off, the seedlings feature elongated leaves. They aren't round, they aren't jagged, they have this distinct, stretched shape. Second, and this is probably the absolute most crucial identifier, there's a distinct red hue located specifically in the middle of the stems. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill generic green sprouts, no way. That red hue acts like a biological fingerprint. You know, in the vast world of balcony gardening, observing these tiny, minute details, the shape of a preliminary leaf, the exact coloration of a super fragile stem, is the ultimate key to unlocking a plant's identity long before it ever produces a flower. Moving on to our next section, identifying the suspects, the deductive process. All right, with our clues firmly in hand, those elongated leaves and red-hued stems, it's time to run through the list of usual suspects sprouting in Ang's garden. This just brilliantly illustrates the cognitive process of deduction. Check out how Ang breaks this down. Suspect number 1 is amaranth. Ang notes that the mystery seedlings looked familiar and immediately brought amaranth to mind. But a good investigator relies on a gut feeling and then verifies it, right? And Ang immediately doubted this initial guess. It just wasn't quite right. That leads us straight to suspect number 2, Celosia. Now, why Celosia? Because the gardener connects the dots to previous experiences. Celosia is actually botanically related to amaranth, which perfectly explains why suspect 1 felt so familiar but was ultimately incorrect. Plus, Ang cross-references this with past garden data, specifically noting that a Celosia plant was recently found growing completely on its own in a previous journal entry, part 944. So the precedent is there. The biological relationship is there. I mean, the deductive reasoning is just incredibly sound here.
Which brings us to our final section, the waiting game. The verdict deferred.
The crucial takeaway here is that a good detective, and for that matter, a really good gardener, knows exactly when to wait for more evidence. You simply cannot force a seedling to reveal its true identity before it's biologically ready to do so. I want to pause on this quote for a second, because it highlights something incredibly profound about the learning process itself. Ang writes, Only while drafting this post did it dawn on me that these are probably Celosia seedlings. Think about that. This breakthrough realization didn't happen while staring at the dirt. It happened during the actual documentation of the journal entry. It just goes to show that sometimes the simple act of writing things down, of structuring your thoughts and formally describing the evidence, is the exact mechanism you need to solve a puzzle. The discipline of keeping a journal wasn't just about record keeping, it was literally the active ingredient in the gardener's epiphany.
So if we map out the timeline of our investigation, it reveals this really continuous journey of discovery. In the present day, the seedlings were carefully observed and documented, specifically noting that red hue and those elongated leaves. Then, during the drafting phase of the journal, the realization about the Celosia suspect hits. But the case isn't completely closed yet. The timeline extends into the coming weeks. The scientific method requires solid verification. And for Ang, that means exercising some patience. The seedlings are going to have to mature to a certain size, maybe developing their true leaves or even their initial blooms, before a definitive verdict can be reached and the Celosia theory is proven as a hard fact.
We're going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wait right alongside Ang. Nature always operates on its own schedule, completely immune to our desire for immediate answers. The clues absolutely point to Celosia, the deduction is solid, and the historical precedent from Journal Entry 944 backs it all up. But the final confirmation remains hidden inside those tiny red-stemmed sprouts. Will the coming weeks validate the gardener's brilliant deduction, or does the balcony hold one last unexpected twist for us? The only way to know for sure is to keep watching, keep documenting, and keep questioning the world growing right outside our windows.